Once upon a time, there was a princess named Katarina. She was the most beautiful princess in all the lands, and every prince alive wanted her hand in marriage because she was not only beautiful, but intelligent and kind as well. But what no man knew was that she could not speak at all. She had been kidnapped at the age of 4 and had not spoken since her return. The resident fairy godmother of the castle said that it would take her one true love to get her to speak again. And her parents despaired because they knew that for Katarina to find her one true love could take a lifetime. A prince named Lucifer was practicing his swordplay in a kingdom nearly a week's ride away when a messenger burst into the courtyard calling for him. "Lucifer, Lucifer, my lord prince, your parents call you to the throne room," he cried, dropping to one knee before the prince. This particular messenger had a tendency to overreact, and Prince Lucifer calmly sheathed his sword, replacing it where he got it from the sword rack. A servant wheeled the rack inside a storage room as Prince Lucifer followed the messenger to the throne room. "Lucifer, it is time for you to find a wife," said the king. "Ella has been nagging me about when you'll finally settle down and bring her grandchildren. You know how your mother wants grandchildren." No sooner than the word grandchildren had escaped from his mouth than the throne room doors burst open again. "Jeremy, I had heard every last word of that. I have not been nagging you, merely suggesting that you finally bring our son up here and tell him he must find a wife, as I see you have done so. I have brought you some cakes as a reward." She snapped her fingers and a maid brought forth a platter with cookies and cakes upon it. "This must last you the rest of the day, my love." She smiled and kissed the king. "Lucifer, darling, I have heard that the Princess Katarina of Teroth is looking for a husband. I believe it is proper these days for suitors to call upon the female. And so tomorrow you are leaving for Teroth city, capital of Teroth. You will behave respectably. Your behavior reflects upon your father and your country." Lucifer bowed his head. "Yes, mother. Is she a decent woman? You know I will not marry a girl whose only concern is where her next dress arrives. She is beautiful and kind, they say, and her parents are quite pleasant. You will enjoy yourself, I am sure." Ella waved her hand. "You're dismissed. Go pack, dear, you leave early tomorrow morning." Prince Lucifer left and climbed the north tower steps to his room at the top, grumbling about his mother the entire way. He threw a month's worth of clothes into a trunk and managed to fit a lute and 3 bottles of shampoo in as well. He left at dawn the next morning and traveled by carriage for the better part of a week before reaching Teroth city and the front gate of the castle of Teroth. "I am Lucifer of Riel, calling for Katarina of Teroth." He announced his presence to the castle guards, and they checked the seals of the 12 pieces of parchment his parents had packed in his road bag, knowing he'd need them to declare his suit for the lovely princess. The head guard saluted him as his carriage passed through the gates, and the king and queen of Teroth warmly welcomed him into their castle. Like home, he was put into rooms in the north tower, but here he was on the bottom floor rather than the top. It was nice, he mused, not having to climb up 1,000 stairs when he was already exhausted. He collapsed on the bed and slept till dinner. At dinner, Lucifer sat across the lovely Katarina and nervously smiled at her when he wasn't looking down at his plate. He made small talk with the king and queen, noticing the princess's strange absence from the conversation. "Katarina, I'm sure your voice is as lovely as the rest of you. Why then do you not speak?" The queen stepped in and answered for her daughter. "She has not spoken since she was stolen away as a child. We found her, but her voice has been lost to the threads of time. However, we have heard that she may regain her use of it if she is to meet and marry her one true love. He alone may coax her voice from her." Lucifer smiled. "'Tis a good thing then, milady. I cannot stand a woman who has nothing better to do than talk my ear off. Katarina, would you like to go stargazing down on the river in 2 nights' time? Though the night sky cannot compare to your beauty, I I would like nothing more than to gaze upon it with you beside me." She blushed and nodded, averting her gaze from the handsome prince. "Take her nursemaid as a chaperone," the queen said. "It will be most improper if you do not." "I would do nothing less," Lancifer said, deferring to the proper woman. "If you and the king would like to accompany us, you may. I think a picnic beneath the stars would be most wonderful. We could have small sweets and light drinks, I think. The stars come out far too late for a hearty dinner." "We shall consider your offer and inform you tomorrow night," the queen smiled. "Thank you for your thoughtfulness. It is late now, and I'm afraid we must go to bed. Good night, Prince Lancifer. Katarina, to bed with you." Lancifer waved at the princess as she followed her parents to their rooms, and he made his way back to the first floor of the North Tower, where he fell asleep as soon as his head touched the pillow. The next morning, he joined the Teroth royal family for breakfast, and greeted Katarina with a kiss on the back of her hand and a twinkle in his eye. "You are lovely, my dear lady. There are not words to describe to what extent, but know that you are the most beautiful creature I've ever laid eyes on." Katarina blushed and bowed her head as Lancifer rose from a bent knee. After they ate breakfast, he demonstrated his skill with sword and horse, and they dined on sandwiches in the gardens at lunch. Lancifer found he was quickly warming up to the quiet princess, and he took her hand as they wandered the gardens. She smiled sunnily at him, and he returned her smile. She led him through her favorite parts, and he requested to see the greenhouse full of the small trees her land was known for. As she accompanied Lancifer through the greenhouse, he told her stories of his home and childhood. She reacted wonderfully, smiling in all the right places and nearly crying when the moment called for it. They arrived to dinner together, her hair still messed from when they lay on their backs atop a hill, watching clouds pass by and his stand still dirty from helping a gardener prune a tree. The next morning, Lancifer met Katarina again, and she bid him good morning. He was shocked. She wasn't supposed to talk. Her voice was hoarse and clearly rusted from lack of use, but still beautiful, he thought. "Will you accompany me to the music hall today?" she asked. "I would like to play for you." He nodded, ecstatic that she'd begun to talk again. She sat down in front of the piano, and beautiful music flowed forth from her fingertips. She poured her heart into the music, and Lancifer was overwhelmed with the love she projected through the notes at him. As the final notes faded from the air, he whispered, "I love you." And she returned in kind, "And I love you." That night, they gazed at the stars and cuddled close on a blanket by the river, snacking on cookies and cake, and every year they would take a trip to the river on the same day to gaze at the stars of the night. For years, they lived happily ever after, and their kingdoms grew strong together. The end.